Welcome to our podcast, Our Story to Tell, where we share the behind the scenes of moving abroad and how that move changed everything for us.
We're Tanner and Rissa, an American family living life abroad with our two little adventures. From the U.S. to Germany, Japan, and now Italy, this podcast is more than just travel. It's a story of transformation, too.
Everyone has a story, and this is ours. And maybe parts of it will sound a bit like yours, too.
So let's get started.
Yes, let's get started. Welcome back, everyone. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're returning, we hope you guys have had a great week. In today's episode, like many others for our podcast, we're going to be talking about things that have changed us moving abroad. But specifically, this episode is going to be talking about raising our kids abroad and how much we didn't realize that was going to change us and impact our lives.
Yes, when we first moved to Germany, it felt like a huge career step for you, a new adventure, a chance for us to travel a lot. And we knew that we would, likely change in ways. But at the time, we only had a 1-year-old. And I don't think I realized how different raising Willa abroad would be compared to like our childhoods. We knew we'd be raising her at least for 3 years abroad, but it has just completely changed so much for us.
Yeah, I think it also was because we had never experienced like raising a kid before, right? So it was kind of like we're trailblazing our own path with the family.
Yeah.
But then it's like now we're doing it away from a lot of things that we're going to talk about today. Like we're doing it away from the support system, away from families, but then also like schooling and integrating, and just the way of life is so different in each of the countries that we've lived in. So it was very eye-opening, and we're going to dive into a few aspects of that today.
But before we get into that, we wanted to actually make a little announcement here and share that this is going to be our last podcast for a while.
Yeah, not going to be stopping indefinitely, but for the time being, we've just found that the pace of our life right now, ironically, as we're talking about raising kids abroad, our attention and focus for ourselves, each other, and for our girls is being stretched a little bit farther than we really think is sustainable for right now. And so this is more of us listening to ourselves, listening to our family's needs, and just taking a little pause, and at least the podcast section of our channels.
Yes, our plan is to still continue our YouTube videos. We'll continue doing them bi-weekly, though. This has kind of been a hard decision for us to make because we've never stepped back in such a big way. Like only coming out with materials every other week seems big to me.
Yeah, but I do think after we've talked about it for now a couple months, it does feel like it's the best decision. Just with other changes and things that are going behind the scenes, I think it's going to be a really good time for us to be able to reset, take like a regrouping and recharge, and be able to focus on other aspects of our lives that we want to dedicate a little more time to.
Yeah, and the podcast does require quite a bit more time than our YouTube videos. That might be surprising to some of you, but we've just had 5 years of practice on our YouTube videos, so I feel like, are really efficient and like we really enjoy making them. Of course, we're traveling with them, so that helps. But here with our podcast, I feel like we've already received and got back what we were hoping for.
Yeah, a lot of it was to share a lot of our story, to reach out to others who have gone through similar experiences living abroad, our relationship with like religion and faith, and then also connecting on certain aspects of like being parents. So we've felt like you said it very well, like we felt like we've gotten a lot out of what we were hoping for the podcast. And right now it feels like a really good step to take a pause and then regroup in a couple months from now. We'll see. We're not giving ourselves like any definitive timeline, but at this point, it feels like the best move. So for those who have been here for the last few months, thank you so much. It really means a lot to have the community, to hear the feedback, and be able to share so much of like what's special to us through these episodes.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more of like a summer break thing, but we'll see where life goes. And yeah, I feel like we just have a lot more things that we could and want to talk about. So definitely stay tuned with the updates there. So with that, we're going to jump back into our podcast. We're going to be talking about the good, the hard, the surprising, and a bit about raising third culture kids.
And we'll definitely dive into what that means, because I had no idea what that meant before, and I think it's continually evolving. But yeah, let's dive into kind of the good. I think it's pretty obvious that we love the international scene because it is so diverse. It allows us to explore new countries, foods, religions, languages that like weren't available to where we grew up. And so that aspect has been huge for us to explore with our kids, to like give them that exposure has been huge for us because they now have seen so much that we didn't see until we were, late teens, early 20s, and we began to start exploring the world.
Yeah, it's amazing to have these experiences and realize that for our kids, this is just their normal. And I think we definitely try to bring in a huge element of gratitude and awe, and also the perspective that this is not normal for most individuals around the world, adults and kids. But I mean, our girls don't know any different. Like Willa moved when she was 1 and Noah was born in Germany. This is her life.
Yeah. And I think it's important to also point out that because social media, like, of course, the number of people documenting their experience of moving their family abroad, whether it's the bucket list family or whether it's the sailing vagabond, they're like out on this catamaran out in the ocean all the time with their kids. Like, there's some pretty wild adventures out there. So we know we're not unique to that. But if you really look back and think about it, like even our community, our family, our hometown, like we are an exception and not like the normal. We will never forget the fact that, we're very fortunate to be in the positions, and we try to let our kids know that too as well, that this just doesn't happen. Anyway, we could go down a lot of rabbit holes, but you made a good point that we do try to point out to Willa, especially because Noah's like, it's La La Land right now. Like,
Yeah.
she's just living her best life. But Willa's starting to understand so much more. So that's part of like what we try to talk with her for.
Even yesterday, we were actually going to walk to renew our soggiornos to live here in Italy. And she was telling me, you weren't here for this, but she was telling me like, I just want to go back to Japan, because she really just didn't want to walk to the visa office. And I was like, but we have to do this to stay in Italy. And when she said that, I was like, Willow, we just can't go and move back to Japan. Like, this is where Daddy's job is. It's not that easy. But in her head, it seems easy to make such huge international moves.
Especially since we've done so many in her life. Like, that's been her life. And, being here in Italy will hopefully be that longest stretch, and we can give her a little more stability that way. But
yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, she loves Italy. Like I said, she really just didn't want to have to walk to the place. But I do think it's an example of, how it's just kind of normal for her to change, to make these moves, to view life with a lens that opportunity is just right at your fingertips.
Yeah, for sure. And we want them to have ambitious goals like ourselves, right? Like, we talk quite frequently how 10 years, 15, 20 years from now, when they're both out of the house, which is so hard to think about, but we're not going to talk about that right now. We kind of foresee that it could go either way, right? I think some people have mentioned on like our YouTube comments, our YouTube channel, and even on like some of the podcast episodes, they're like, moving around so much is going to make your kids want to like stay in one place. And we recognize that may be true, just like where we stayed in one place or a geographical area our whole life. It's kind of given us like this bug to like go travel everywhere. So we do take that in mind.
But then we also receive comments that it's like, it's so fun to watch you guys, because I can just imagine Willa being married to someone from like Singapore, and then your other daughter living in Australia or something. And I do think obviously any option could happen, because their perspective is so global, like the world, hopefully to them, they feel like, they can choose and put in the effort to live where they want to.
And yeah, like as they get older, we'll try to explain it as they can like grasp the understanding about, which passports have a little bit more flexibility than others, or a lot more. And we do recognize that we come from a place with having an American passport. It makes it quite easy to go to many places. And, with remote work going nowadays, it's very easy for people to pick up and basically live anywhere that they want to.
Okay, so going back to our kids and our experiences. So, of course, with all of our moves, our kids have experienced different religions, foods, cultures, school systems, traditions, and just completely different ways of thinking about life. And one thing that's fascinating to me, and I think is a benefit, is I feel like Willa especially has maybe a little bit more attention to body language, to, languages for sure, and is maybe a little bit more emotionally intelligent than, say, I, in my head, think that I probably was at that age, because she's just picking up on so many different differences.
Yeah, I think I can see that. And she asks quite a few deep questions. And maybe it's just like the age as she's getting into this, past like the younger age and she's getting onto like, 7 years old soon. It's hard to like, yeah.
I'm making a face over here like, don't say that.
Yeah. Obviously she still has a couple months, but it's like,
she has more than 6 months, thankfully.
but we're not far off. Just like the emotional maturity, the physical maturity that's coming along with everything, it likely has contributed to the fact that she's going to school and she's meeting kids who are from different backgrounds, not just from Italy, other immigrants who are like at her school as well, that totally shape her perspective. And she sees like a lot of those differences. I'm sure there are many places within the US that even have a greater amount of diversity where they get to learn about the different cultures and customs as well. It's just where we grew up in a fairly, monocultured area, like in the States, like we had a little bit of exposure to like other international experiences. So I think I can agree with you on that. And that has definitely been a benefit.
Yes. And segueing onto that, I feel like it creates this idea that there's not just one way to live. And I do think that this has created a bit of flexibility and open-mindedness to just the possibilities of the world and acceptability of people in general that are living life in a different way than hers looks, or our family's looks back home, or her friends look here, Like she has friends in Germany, Japan, and Italy that we still are staying in touch with occasionally, and she's definitely has recognized the differences, and she loves them all.
Yeah. And hopefully it'll continue to like help her have that understanding when she's, thinking or talking or meeting new people and say, oh, like that's interesting. Have like a natural curiosity to learn more about other cultures, like just kind of like what we have as we've continued to get older. Like our desire and interest to learn more about different cultures has gotten bigger the more that we've explored outside of the US.
Exactly. And another thing we wanted to mention was that our kids and us are quite comfortable in uncomfortable scenarios. Like, obviously, it's not always easy. It's not always rainbows and sunshine. However, we are used to being in scenarios that feel new and different and uncomfortable.
Trying to break down like a language barrier, being and learning and exploring new places that you're unfamiliar with, like that puts you outside of like your comfort zone, not being in the same thing every single day. It really causes you to think and explore and, I don't know, like step outside of that comfort box. And moving as often as we have really has been the biggest drive because we're having new acquaintances, new friends, new schools, etc. And we recognize that that kind of also transitions in over to like the downsides of just the frequency of how we've moved and just moving in general. But we'd be lying to say that it's not a positive as well. Like that really does help us feel like okay with change.
Yeah, I remember the move from Germany to Japan and feeling, we both felt quite emotional about leaving, and Germany will always have such a special place in our hearts. But I feel like some of my concerns were how this change would affect our family, but especially Willa. And that move gave me so much confidence because Willa adapted to Japan better than both of us. Like, I was so proud of her. And when I look back, I just am still in awe of how resilient she was and flexible. And individuals told us that, like, kids are so resilient, especially at that age. She was moving right by her 4th birthday, and so she was young. But yeah, when I had that experience, I knew that moving from Japan to Italy, like my doubts and concerns were far less because we'd had experienced that. And my confidence just grew a lot on her ability, but in general, like kids' ability. Like if you've considered a move for yourself and potentially a move across the states or across a continent, across the world, I can sit here now confidently and be like, trust yourselves, trust your kids.
Another aspect that we arguably say is one of our favorites is the ability for them to kind of live like storybook, storytell, fairy tale.
They're all
kind of there. Experiences, going to castles and staying in castles in Germany, and then in Japan, like seeing Mount Fuji and hiking down waterfalls and swimming in the hot pools below these waterfalls that are like world famous. I don't know. There's so many experiences that we've had that people would say is like a trip of a lifetime. Of course, there's been a lot of sweat, tears, and sacrifice that has gone into all of those efforts that we've made to make the move. But for them, like they've been able to see so much and I guess like really take in and hopefully will appreciate one day in the future. I'm sure that they'll want to go back to so many of the places that we've seen because they were too young to remember a lot of it. But that's been a huge positive impact for us.
Yeah, I've said this before, at least to you. I'm not sure if I've said it in a YouTube video or in a podcast before, but I often will reflect on how incredible it has been to be able to experience a more local way of life here in Italy, Japan, and Germany. What I call them is like our Italian life, our Japanese life. And it's hard to explain if you haven't lived abroad out of your own country, but it's just, it's so different than traveling to a place. Like you can try and have a very authentic vacation in a different country, but when you're here in boots on your ground and your kids are enrolled in the local school and you're meeting up with Italian friends on school drop-off, or you're doing spontaneous activities with the local community. Oh, I love that aspect about really getting to see how different people experience life around the world and just getting like a taste. Like I know, of course, we're not local. We didn't grow up here. It is different, but being able to hear and talk to locals and interact on a daily basis is just like, oh, such a treasure.
Yeah. And it's definitely helped our kids feel, I think, more settled just because they're able to go over to a friend's house and they're having meals with them, or they're playing games and birthday parties. Like that's one aspect that we've talked about a little bit as well, is like there's so many opportunities for them to create these bonds with friends, and hopefully with our decision to try and stay here for as long as possible under my current job, like hopefully those will continue to like just grow and be more meaningful for them. We touched on this a little bit before about our kids experiencing travel and getting to see so many places, but another benefit is like the logistics of traveling have been really streamlined, I guess you want to even call it, where they're used to going to new places. They're not afraid to go and explore new towns. They're excited about it. Logistics on like airplanes or airports or public transportation. They're like, I wouldn't say pros, but like pretty darn near pros, and really excited to go do it.
Yeah, and as you say that, they're definitely still kids. And so we've had our fair share of emotional moments on the airplanes or in road trips, but they're used to it. In part, some of the emotional times come because it's like, another long road trip. Like they know what that looks like. They know what it entails. For the most part, they're very adaptable and resilient on these trips, and they're just good travelers. And I think that's just because they've done that their whole lives as well. So I have to laugh when we'll get messages from people being like, what are travel tips with kids? What are activities you take on the plane? Or like these tips and tricks, like give me your tips and tricks. And along the way, like we also have learned a lot. And so naturally we probably do have tips and tricks to share. But honestly, for the most part, my answer is like, you just take them with you. You just bring them. They're going to get used to it. And they'll adapt, and maybe that's some of my type B personality coming out. Half the time I feel like we go to a place and we're like, oh crap, we don't have food, we don't have
games.
A diaper. Yeah, like an extra change of clothes. Like there have been a handful plus of times where we're just not as prepared as we should be, but we're still doing it, and it all ends up okay.
Yeah, maybe a few more tears because they're hungry and we aren't prepared, but like for the most part, I think because we prioritize so much like outdoor and other activities and stuff, their ability to travel has also been so much easier because it's not dependent on them like having a screen to entertain them as well. Sure, they have moments on like really long car rides, or there's moments when like we're okay if they watch a show or a movie or something, but like that is the rarity. Like that doesn't happen every single time that we're going somewhere, which I think also makes it so that they entertain themselves better. They find other activities to do. So if your phone's dead or something else, like we don't have those meltdowns.
Yeah, I know it's kind of like trendy now, but like trying to give your kids like the 90s childhood where they can just look at the raindrops on the car window and
or look how dirty the windshield is. Like that's how ours is right now. Like, man, this car is dirty.
Yeah, but I mean, you do it, and together as a family, you get closer on these travels, and for the hard times and the best times, and that's kind of the next thing we wanted to talk about in general is living abroad. One of the most beautiful benefits for this move has been the bond and the level of closeness that our immediate family has.
Yeah, I would say that we touched on this a little bit before in another episode as well, but for the most part, we have felt like, because we have been so far away from immediate family, so far away from like really consistent friends and such, we've had to lean on each other a lot through the thick and thin. There's not big breaks where we're going to family on the weekends and whatever. Like we're there. Like we didn't start having regular date nights without the kids until like we got here to Italy.
Yeah, we had a couple in Japan, and do you remember that felt like, oh my gosh, such a new
It felt foreign.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
it
did.
honestly felt foreign, and it was kind of hard to initially get used to it, to be like, oh, this is okay. Like I think there was a certain level of guilt that we both felt from it because we had just spent so much time. But as we've been able to have more consistent times where, our kids are with friends and we do babysitting swaps, you and I have really drawn so close to each other. And, sure, we have plenty of arguments, plenty of disagreements, but we have so many moments to bond, have long discussions like we're having now about our experience. I guess this is both a positive and a negative as far as raising kids abroad is we get to have so much time with our kids. And we love that we get to basically form them into the adolescents and the adults that they're going to become one day. But at the same time, like we do recognize that the lack of a consistent village like we would have around friends and family in our hometowns could also like limit them to have like that village mentality and the ability to like lean on peers and the parents of friends and aunts and uncles and grandparents more. They still have, relationships and they communicate with them, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
As spending hours on end playing with, cousins and friends on a regular basis. And we recognize that.
I'm getting flashbacks to when Noah was born. And I do remember being able to like share Noah with my mom when she was there, which was just so incredibly special. And then my sister came to visit and your mom did later on in the year. My dad did. And I loved those moments. And in the same hand, I remember feeling like, oh, but I really want to hold my baby right now. Because I think we were just so used to living on our own for so long that like sharing my newborn baby, who of course we have, like I just have such a bond with, like was the most beautiful thing because this time with family is treasured. And I was like, oh, but I kind of like being able to just savor her just to myself,
Yeah.
So it is interesting how it can both be a pro and con. And I feel like all of the topics, so far we've mentioned, and we will with some of the challenges, kind of just depends on your perspective and moments in time, because we feel the highs and then we feel the lows from it. But wrapping up the positives, the best parts about moving abroad, in addition to being a close family, is our kids being able to recognize that home is not a place. Home is a feeling of love and peace and connection. You can build your home wherever you are if you have the people that make home feel like home.
Yeah. I also think a lot of people can associate, the physical location with like the memories. But I do think that, yeah, we've really tried to develop that wherever we go, traveling, living, like we get to create that. And that is powerful because we don't know where we're going to end up in life and where they're going to end up in life. And that's like beautiful to know that they can be comfortable in new locations, knowing that they can create that environment as best as they can to make that feel like home.
Yeah, I just think it could be a very beautiful perspective for them as they age to know that they're going to be okay, and they can make it what they want to be.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's move on to the next section, which is more like the challenges of living abroad, some of the surprises.
The most difficult thing is just the distance from family. And it's not even just like the big holidays, the birthdays and stuff. It's also the small things, right? Like the ability to have, a movie night with cousins or getting together with grandparents and aunts and uncles and just like getting to experience school events, etc. Those moments where they get to see our kids growing up, excelling at their activities, or, hey, look what I made from school today, or whatever it is. Those moments definitely have pulled at our heartstrings quite a bit. And we do our best to try and communicate with family, to try and have them reach out, to have us reach out, sending and receiving letters and packages and stuff. But there's nothing quite like, the physical proximity.
Yeah, I think the hardest part for me is watching our girls miss family members. Like, it's one thing for me to miss them, because I can like hold that sadness in my heart, but to like see it on your kids, you just don't want them to feel that sadness. And they do, and that's part of life, and that's what makes them resilient. And there's the benefits from those scenarios as well. But, as a parent, it's like you're holding your own sadness and grief and theirs.
Hmm. It can be a balancing act that you have to wade through a lot of emotions. Our intentionality of living where we are and continuing to live this life so far away from family, it's not something that is taken lightly, and it can be enjoyable and it can be difficult at the same time.
Yeah, and that's something that I actually wanted to touch base on here is just the complexity of feelings that comes when us as parents, we know that we chose this life. Like we have actively made intentional decisions to move to Germany, Japan, and now Italy. And they have affected our kids. And in these moments, especially when they're saying like, I want to go to Utah, I miss my grandma, that you start to question. And it is complex because for us, we feel like this is what's best for our family. And the other thing that can be true is that it's hard.
And it's not just family. Like, of course, friends are a huge aspect of anyone's life. The 5 people closest to you often include many friends, and they shape who you become and like your preferences. So we have had ups and downs with our experience, getting closer to our friends in Germany and then leaving, and then our short stint in Japan, getting closer to friends as well. For Willa as well, like thankfully she's been able to get some really good friends here in Italy, and she's at the developmental stage now where their personalities are really blooming, and they're learning and growing so much that we're happy that we're going to be here for several more years for her friendships to grow. But yeah, especially with like the military community.
Oh yeah.
We have some really close friends, several close friends with kids the same age. And so like we mesh really well and have a lot of great memories and times. But like the reality is in a couple of years, they are likely going to be leaving. And we basically are going to have to start from ground zero again.
With our American community, we will. That is like the double-edged sword, I feel like, of our scenarios is because we integrate so well into the communities. We're saying goodbye to all of the local friendships that we've made in our local villages in Germany and Japan. But then when you leave, it hurts for that aspect. But then while you're still in the country, you're also having friends leave earlier than you. So you're like saying goodbye to them. So there's just a lot of goodbyes. The longer we've been involved closer to the military community, I do feel for them because that's their whole career life is moving and uprooting every 2 to 3, maybe a little bit longer if they're lucky, but that's so frequent.
Yeah.
And I also think it could be another sense of encouragement if you're here listening and you're concerned about a move. It's not just our experience that we're saying like, kids are resilient. It's other people that I'm seeing this happen to, other military families. I'm always surprised by how well some of the kids are handling their moves.
Yeah. But we also have heard plenty of stories where it's been really difficult. And I've even talked to people who they're adults now, our age, and they're like, I hated every bit of moving around every 2 to 3 years. And it was really hard. So we've taken that into consideration as well as we look in our 5-year, 10-year vision boards or whatever, and that looks like.
Yeah, there's people on both sides who think it's great, and then those that have had a lot of difficulties with frequent moves. So you just always have to reevaluate what's best for your family, your kids, and yourselves.
Absolutely. There are many times where we still reevaluate what we're doing, but we love the life that we've created and the path that we've taken. However, there is increasingly complexity when you do move to each place. You have to make so many decisions again, all up front when you're getting settled in for schools, you're getting settled in for a neighborhood to move into, you're getting settled in for activities to put your kids in. All of these decisions are being made with higher frequency and often language barriers and more cultural differences compared to say we had stayed in the same area within Utah or even most places in the US. It's pretty standard. We would know what to expect from enrolling them into public schools. Communication is easier because it's all in English, etc. There's fewer decisions that are complex to be made. It can be quite fatiguing.
The decision fatigue is definitely a real thing. And I think one of the hardest things for sure about making a move, the next 6 months following a move is filled with that. And it is exhausting.
Yeah.
I'm so over that when I think about moving. But I feel like it's also something that's just more a part of your daily life in general. And it's just kind of a constant thing that like you're always learning because, of course, we're learning. We're in a new country. And it can feel exciting and also just a little more tiring, which is a perfect segue to the next topic, which is parenting without the village. Like you talked about a lot of the pros. We mentioned missing family as a con, but the logistics of raising even just 2 kids that we have has been very tiring.
It really has been exhausting, just the mental load alone. And then you have to do the physical action and keep it up. It's been quite demanding. It was definitely not the easy path that we took. And sometimes we question ourselves like, oh, are we purposely making like the most difficult decisions? And I don't think that's always the case. It just sometimes can feel like it in the moment when you're like, oh my gosh, like it feels like we have so many things that we're doing and trying to accomplish. And it's not necessarily even to stay busy, but it's more of like we are high achieving people. Like our personality is there. Sure. But we have high goals, which also means that we have high achievements that we want to do.
Yeah.
And so, as we mentioned at the first of this podcast episode, this is part of us trying to take an intentional step back and focus on those things that bring, not even necessarily like more joy, but I guess in some sense, like taking a mental checkpoint and saying that we need to tone it back a little bit in this area so that we can dedicate more time for ourselves and for our girls there. The intentionality, like you mentioned, is really what we're trying to hone in on more and be able to like reflect and say, okay, this no longer can have as much space in my life right now. And we can reevaluate. So
yeah. And then logistically, as our girls have gotten older, the logistics of parenting without a village have gotten easier because now Noah's, attending Italian asilo, Will is in the public school. So naturally we're getting these childcare services. But before, when it wasn't, like, that's when we really felt it. To have more of a built-in support system would be amazing. I feel emotional, not just for myself, but just for so many people in the world who also have lived in different states from their support system or the military community. Like, my heavens, I feel for the military community where, especially in Japan, we lived there and their husbands were sailors out on ships for half a year at times. And you have these mothers single parenting for half a year and sometimes they have 3 to 4 kids and there's no childcare options for them. They're doing this day in, day out. Such strong individuals.
Definitely can come. And I haven't experienced a lot of it because just the nature of we're living for my job overseas, right? And so it's difficult to also see the wear that it can take on you and like the toll that it can take on them. So obviously, we, like you mentioned, we've now made it into a stage now where like diapers are like, at least day diapers are like not a thing for Noah anymore. And it's like, that's also like another like weight lifted off. And in so many ways we can then focus our energy or I guess be a little less tired in those moments.
At times, as odd as this sounds, I'm grateful that we just didn't know any different, when we moved abroad, because Willow was born right before COVID hit the States in Utah. And so her first year was actually quite isolating. And we've talked about that in previous episodes at how that was so difficult, but we didn't know any different. And so because it was fairly isolating, when we moved to Germany, honestly, in so many ways it was better because we had so many travel opportunities to then include into our lives, but it was still isolating, just kind of always parented with us being the main and at times only support for her.
And so trying to wrap up this section, like we're faced with the reality that we actively made this decision to move abroad, right? We have to sit with those feelings and be honest with ourselves, but then also be grateful for kind of the decisions that we've had, the opportunity that we've had to make this all together. And the reality is there's going to be ups and downs, sunny and cloudy days that we feel heavier about it, that we feel more of the struggle. But then there's also the times where we feel like the happiness. And so like finding that balance through it all is really important.
Yes. So now we're going to be talking about third culture kids, which the first time I heard about this was when someone commented on a YouTube video and said, like, you're raising third culture kids. I remember being like, oh, I am? Like, what is this?
Yeah, and I was like, what? What is third culture kids?
Yeah. So you had mentioned you didn't know about it, and I didn't either. So why don't you share what it is?
So we'll see how well I do this. Basically, they're not raised in the culture that you were raised in. They don't quite fit in the culture that they're being raised in because we're kind of in like a transient stage. Like we're not moving and staying and truly immigrating to that area because of the nature of the work. And so they fit into this third category where it's their third culture, where it's a blend of the identity from us as like their parents and then a blend of the identity of where they are kind of creates like their own culture. One aspect very important is that they don't necessarily consider themselves as like neither American nor Italian in so many ways, for like the example right now.
Yeah. And I would say our scenario is also a little different than some other third culture kids. I would say for the most part, yes, I would say that's what we're kind of raising because we are trying to be as integrated as possible as we can here. And I would also say our kids have really close friends that are with the American community and they all consider themselves American, just like we still consider ourselves that, but they all have plans to go back, like they know what their future looks like. And for us, we're keeping things more open and we would love to be able to continue our lives in Europe or abroad. So I feel like it feels a little bit different because of that reason.
Mm-hmm. It's not like we know exactly when, like we have to go back because we are actively trying to create plans and opportunities beyond any limitations with my work to stay over here to try and, give a little bit more stability and time and ability for our kids to continue learning Italian, to continue having their friends, to continue being in a place for longer. And time will tell, but I do think that third category of like a culture truly resonates with them right now, especially since they live such a on-the-fence life with both cultures and communities, Yeah, I think this whole topic of third culture kids is unique because we recognize the benefits of having a global perspective, kind of like we talked about at the first. They see different religions, see different ethnicities, languages, cultures, food, etc., that it creates this like a bigger picture for them so that they understand that things are different in different parts of the world, within different families, etc. It gives them the ability to, I think, have more empathy and be able to see life from different lenses as well, which we definitely appreciate. And like hopefully for them, it just creates them to be a more rounded person with like more rounded characteristics.
Yeah, and the things that Tanner listed are things that like researchers are saying about third culture kids, which is really awesome to like hear as a parent. And I would say it does come with some challenges and unexpected things that maybe we didn't plan for when we first moved to Germany. So researchers are also saying that some of those challenges could be feeling rootless, struggling to answer the question, where are you from, and navigating multiple identities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, talking about identities, right? We knew and believed and lived our identity that we had based on our geography and religion. Whereas for them, in some ways it's more difficult because we are being so broad in many aspects. We're being so open to different ideas and beliefs and trying to really, have like a better balance from like the experience that we had. She might have, and she will have friends and family and others who are like, oh, like I identify as this. What about you? And they will have like a question mark because they don't know quite yet. And I feel like that's what we're hoping to give them in many ways is the ability as like teenagers and adults to like really transition and feel like they can make more of those educated decisions when they have greater knowledge, experience, and understanding of like where their decisions take them. But it is going to be difficult because they already have friends or siblings of friends who are like starting to do like their Catholic communions here next month. And I know that that's going to happen in like 2 to 3 years when they go through the school and all of her friends are going to be doing this. So it's not an easy situation to be in, but it doesn't mean that it's not possible for them to walk through it. Like I think this ability to sit with both, I'm not sure where I sit right now and I'm happy for where you are, but I don't feel like this need to just like morph my beliefs to like match up to yours. Like that's what we're hoping to give them is the confidence to make those decisions and to be okay with not knowing yet.
Yeah, to stand where they are with the things that they do, but it being okay with not fitting in entirely with those around because they're different. Because we went through a recent faith deconstruction, like even within the walls of our home, we're not able at this time and not wanting, I should say, not only not able, but not wanting to be confined to a specific religion or theology belief. There are plenty of things that we do believe. Like we believe we want our kids to focus on love and kindness and acceptance and like all of these morals and values. However, because we do not identify as a specific one, that is just like an added level, on our kids to be like, we don't know, exactly what religion we have. Like, if she gets asked.
It's so true. Like there are many aspects where, I feel like she, knows and would respond that she's American, right? Because she is, like, she doesn't have any other legal status of anything else. But like, as far as culturally, it will be interesting. But we have full confidence that like we'll navigate that together and we'll be able to give her the support and love that, whatever she decides and she moves on with like in life, we'll be there for her. But it doesn't mean that it's not difficult.
Thankfully, we're in a place where we have that confidence and we've felt and seen firsthand that we can be in this space, but it is difficult. And I feel like in a sense, I don't want to say it's like an experiment, but like this is new. This is new for us to not affiliate with a specific religion. This is new to be raising kids with that. Like we just had all the answers already there for us as children. And I know kids can benefit from that kind of structure. And so, yes, when I put on my like reality cap, it is difficult at times to not question some of that. But I can't authentically sit here and tell her any other answer, nor do I want to.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this episode, we really have to like internalize big questions about how we're raising our kids abroad and like what that means for us. In the end, like we've come to the conclusion and we keep getting reminded that raising kids in general is like a task and there's no easy way to raise a kid. There, especially like in the world's changing, there's so much like influence for our kids. Like you have to take a lot of intentional time to raise them the way that you want them to be raised. Like we talked about with the morals, the values, etc.
And a quick plug that it's beautiful. Like I don't want to be the person that you're like hearing like, oh my gosh, they always just say it's hard, it's hard. Like the joy far outweighs it. Okay, continue.
Yes, I was getting to that, but it's true. It is good to mention both sides of the coin there. Like raising a kid is difficult and it takes energy, but the joy and the outcome on the other side to see someone grow, learn, the spark of joy, excitement, and like curiosity far outweighs it, and it makes it so worth it. And so as we wrap out this episode, this has been a good reflection for us, talking about many points about raising kids abroad, the good, the bad, the in-between. Whatever you're setting your goals and objectives for is likely what you're going to be getting. It's not easy for us to say that like being away from family has been like the most ideal, but we've grown in so many ways. We've really appreciated the experiences that we've been able to give our kids. In the end, like all of the efforts to give kids and ourselves these experiences has been worth it for us.
It hasn't been perfect, but nothing in life should be. And I do feel like a move and an experience like this to get the full volume experience, which full volume is a term we heard yesterday, that I was like, oh, I love that. To me, that means feeling in full some of those highs and those lows. And that's where the growth has happened, in those uncomfortable, hard, challenging situations. And that's where the joy has been felt as well. So happy that we have our girls to do this with. Like, how cool for them to have a childhood such as this. But is it easy? No. Could it be easier if we were back with family? We assume so.
But there are definitely trade-offs on both sides of it. So it's hard to say. Everyone can say it the opposite of where they're at. But in the end, like this experience has been great for us, and we'd really be interested to hear others who are listening who have raised kids abroad or who are raising kids abroad, like what your experiences are, because I feel like a lot of people would have overlap and similarities.
And we're so happy that you're here. We're sad it's going to be a while until you hear from us again with these microphones sitting on the brown leather couch. But it's been such a fun experience to do a podcast with you. Great hosting, babe. Redo. There you go. Thank you guys for listening in. Truly, like, it has healed a bit of our hearts sharing our story, and we look forward to hopping back on in future time.
Yep. So if you're watching this video, today is Rissa's birthday, the day that it's going to be posting. So you didn't even know that either. So be sure to wish her a happy 30th birthday, the dirty 30. Can you believe it? This old woman over here. Just kidding. I did not say old woman. Be sure to let her know of your love for her on her special day today.
Thanks, babe. And thank you, everyone, in advance. We love this community. With that, we'll see you then. Ciao, ciao.